Hey, hello there. Welcome to Talking with Tony. Today I invite back John Perkerson from the TWT football panel. John is in first place amongst the panel's members. Congratulations. Don't take him for like the shooter in a old West Wing episode or something with that cap on and sitting back or some other crime drama. He's a good guy. He's one of us. He's not one of the bad guys. He's one of the good guys. John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, talk a little college football and NFL football today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Bummer we couldn't all be together today, but sickness and everything going around. And just to give everyone a heads up, my dog may or may not make his TWT debut today because he's being very, very clingy right now.
I think we've discussed him before on Talking with Tony episode, and we need to just get a follow up from you because I believe was it a torn ACL that he suffered?
Yeah, the dog version of a torn ACL. And this upcoming Friday, hopefully we get the good news that, all clear, good to go, and just, ramp up activity, but just be aware of, just like a human, you get the all clear to start doing most of what you do, but you gotta, be smart about it as well.
And we do a lot for our animals, John, including you didn't even know about the physical therapy part for dogs, but you've even been taking him to some physical therapy.
Yeah, not too far down the road from you, from Auburn. And, if any listeners, if you're ever in a situation where you need something serious like dog physical therapy or, Lord forbid surgery or something like that, I cannot recommend the Auburn vet school enough. They've just treated Cash and I as best as I could imagine.
I'm pleased to hear that they didn't take it. They didn't take it personally that you were a Georgia Bulldog. In fact, some of those vets may be Georgia undergrads themselves.
Yeah, I think a few are, and I try to make sure not to wear any UGA stuff while I'm there.
That's probably good. Hey, on the topic of UGA, I've noticed that the panel pretty much sticks with Georgia every single week, regardless of what happens in their prior games. Now, Stormy went opposite. I'm going to give a tease right now, and he's one game behind you. He's 60 and 59 overall for the year. His 5 stars, Tennessee +9. But for the most part, everybody has just stuck with Georgia despite some struggles in a couple of games this year. They survived the Kentucky game. Ole Miss, they weren't able to survive despite a good start and a turnover early that they turned into a touchdown. I don't believe they got in. They didn't get in the end zone the rest of the game after that, did they?
No, they did not. And that's what got them. I think it's hard to pick against them because I'm sure the panel knows how good this team can be because, the Texas game, we saw a very bad offense, but good grief when you saw this defense play to its potential.
And the Clemson game.
Right. And then there's been flashes where you see how good this offense can be, like, even though Georgia lost the game, the Alabama game being down 4 touchdowns, somehow almost won the game. It's been a very, very frustrating year if you're a Dogs fan, no doubt about it. I'm not the most confident about Saturday, but this always seems to be one of those games where they have their backs against the wall, that they show up and, blow a team out or just shut a team down. Kind of like the Texas game. Everyone was counting them out, and they came out there and just dominated that entire game. So hopefully as a fan, we're in for that again on Saturday, but I'm not banking on it either.
We don't know how really things work out. With still a great deal. I see it every week, but a great deal of football left to be played. And the loss to Ole Miss may end up benefiting Georgia. It could work out for Georgia that, and they could still end up in the SEC championship game. I got to be clear there. But say they didn't go to the SEC championship game, but they only had 2 losses, they would more than likely be in the field for the college football playoff without having to play the SEC championship game. And people could push back there and say, well, yeah, but they wouldn't have a bye in the first round. Well, they'd have to win the SEC championship game to have that bye anyway. So it might be good for them to get healed up after a tough, regular season and not make it. Although I want to be clear, there's still a path for them into the SEC championship game as well. So we don't really know what happens going down the line, but in the end, it could benefit them not to be in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I mean, because when you think about it, they're going to get a bye if they don't play in the SEC championship because they'll have that Saturday off where those 2 teams playing in it will play that game. And, You think about it, if you're the loser of that game and you don't get the bye week, you kind of get the short end of the stick because you have to play in the championship game and then you have to play in the first round.
If you get a bid to the dance, there could be a team that has 3 losses or so and loses that SEC championship game. And I don't think a 4-loss team gets into the playoff, even the first round.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think somebody pushed back against me when I said this one time, but I won't be shocked if this is how things are going to be for the foreseeable future. And I hate it, but if championship games become a thing of the past.
I don't think they will be because of the money that are involved in them and in the television deal, but it may not be the emphasis. It may be what the deal with like the players not playing certain bowl games. They may not it may not be as important to them because they see the big picture. Winning for a team, not necessarily an individual player, but winning for that team may not be as critical. I mean, everybody would like to be undefeated and then win the conference championship game and have that week off. But let's just face it, that's going to be hard to do. Oregon has that opportunity to do that. I still feel like Ohio State's the best team in the Big Ten, but then often they don't play like it. And that was certainly Indiana looks fabulous. I need to be fair to them, too, being undefeated. They have an opportunity, too. The Big Ten has 4 of the top 5 places right now, actually. But you know me. It's the big 18, and I call it the big 30 because I think it's absolutely ludicrous. And I still haven't accepted Penn State's been in the Big 10 for a while now, and I still don't accept them in the Big 10. So of course I'm not really accepting Oregon in the Big 10 either.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, they should just call it the Big 18. I mean, it's not the college football we know from even 2010 or 2011. It just keeps changing and changing and changing. And I guess, like they say, the only thing you can do is just roll with it and, try to learn to accept it. But, who knows, maybe one day people will just get kind of tired and maybe there will be a hard reset back to some type of normalcy.
The ACC is known for basketball. That is their thing. And I'm not putting down their teams in football this year. I'm just stating the facts of that Tobacco Road and all is what we know ACC basketball as. The biggest thing that the ACC has is the ACC men's basketball tournament. In its history, every team in the conference has always played in that conference tournament at the end of the year. Because they have 18 teams now, they've got to limit to 15 teams that are going to make the ACC basketball tournament. That's how ludicrous this has gotten, that when their baby, their thing that they are known more for than anything, every team can't even be represented to save your season, if you will. There's been some situations like that. Hey, look, Virginia one time won 3 games in 3 days and was seeded 8th. And the next year, I think they won the first 2 and lost in the finals and nearly did it again. We saw a University of Georgia team when the tornado came through. They weren't the worst team in the tournament, but they saved their season by winning the conference basketball tournament and making the NCAA basketball tournament. Same thing for Auburn in '85. They became the first team to win 4 games in 4 days. But I think it's in the SEC tournament. But I think it's ludicrous. It is absolutely ludicrous when the ACC can't, because the conference has gotten so many teams, can't have every team play in their own basketball tournament. That will be the case come March.
When I hadn't seen it in a while. I need to go back and watch it. But, ESPN did a great documentary about the death of the Big East Conference. And, if you're a college
Requiem of the, yeah.
If you're a college basketball fan at one time, too, the Big East, good grief at what they had. It's, I think that's the other thing that, you see some people mention it. You're going to see it some with basketball and probably some too. You won't hear about it as much with your non-revenue sports, but what's happening to them and, how do they keep up? How do they afford this? And, what's going to happen with those types of tournaments? And, I think, at the end of the day, it's all about the almighty dollar, but, at the end of the day, sometimes the most evil in the world is caused by the almighty dollar.
Dave, you're right. Dave Gavitt had quite a vision also. I want to just follow up on that Big East for you, too. And he had, back when ESPN was really in its infancy, Big Monday became a thing, doubleheader Big East games. And it was just a great time. And it was, the early 80s. But then shortly after that, people like John Thompson and Louis Carnesecca, they became household names. Raleigh Massimino, I could, Jimmy Boeheim would go down the list. And then the players, the Patrick Ewans, they'd be right there on your television, and the Ronnie Cycles and Dwayne Pearl Washington and all, and Chris Mullen. And you knew who they were. It was kind of a brand. And I think it helped them come NCAA basketball tournament time too, not only get in the field, but get seated. Conference basketball tournaments are still the pinnacle. Evan Horton, who is ultimately your boss, he loves Feast Week more than anything. Okay, that's the week of Thanksgiving where we used to have the Great Alaska Shootout and the Maui Invitational. Great Alaska Shootout went away, but about 10 more tournaments have taken its place all through the world. Throw the Bahamas in there now. I mean, they'll be playing in England before too long. There's several in South Carolina. There's one in Texas. There's Orlando. They're everywhere. So tournaments are a big deal, including in-season tournaments as well. What'd you say we pick some football, see if we can give some guys some winners?
Sounds good. Give me a second to pull up my picks just so I don't,
Well, I want to congratulate you coming off another solid week. Your 5-stars have not been good. You're 3-8 there, but you're 3 games over 500, and you're in first place on the panel at 61-58. So you might be feeling some confidence coming into today.
A blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again.
Whenever I see Navy, it's a bad taste in my mouth because they beat Memphis earlier this year in football, and it was a real costly loss to the Tigers. That's going to keep the Tigers from going on to play for their conference championship game and potentially into the college football playoff that Memphis now has no shot at. And so speaking of when you said those non-revenue sports, I can't help but feel bad for our Memphis Lady Tigers soccer team. They were a tremendous team all year, and they were top 10 most of the season. They ended up with the number 1 seed for their conference tournament, and they lost in double overtime in a game televised on ESPNU in their conference championship to East Carolina, and were not selected. They were not given an at-large bid to the NCAA women's soccer field. So I know that's a bad taste in their mouth. They played a decent non-conference schedule. Some of the teams probably weren't as good as they were hoping they were. But when you schedule like Iowa State, Kansas State, you probably feel like you're going to schools that are, bigger than you, been playing soccer longer, but didn't happen for them. And I hate that for them. But I said Navy, first of all, because it's the first game up. Tulane, the Green Wave, favored by 6.5 at Navy. Somebody's going to have to explain to me why Tulane often wears blue jerseys, even though they're the Green Wave. This time they'll be in white. How do you see it?
I'm going to go with Navy on this one. I know they had the slip up with Notre Dame, but I think they just can keep having that special season they've been having.
Yeah, we wish Drew Cronick, former East Coweta Indian, and of course Coach Cronick's son, he's the offensive coordinator at Navy, success there Saturday, and they're catching 6.5 points. I have a selection there, and I should need to preface that by saying I'm 26-26 after a bad week this past week. I was 3 over 500, but I have fallen back. I'm 5-6 in my 5-stars and 10-4 in soccer, and no soccer this weekend. Most teams are off, so I won't do that. But I will take a couple more football picks. And I'll go with Tulane minus 6.5, just hoping that their defense can slow down that Navy offense. Clemson is favored by 10 at Pittsburgh, and you and I are on opposite sides here because I go with the home team, the Pitt Panthers, plus 10, trying to stop a 2-game losing streak. You've got the hot team in Clemson. They were so impressive in the second half against Virginia Tech last week. They were trailing 7-0 at the half, and then they went out and I believe scored 28 unanswered to go ahead 28-7. You like Clemson?
Yeah, I do. And hopefully it doesn't turn into the 2007 season when West Virginia was one of the hottest teams in the nation, and somehow they went into Pittsburgh and lost that game. And what a weekend that was, with everyone battling for that number 2 spot,
including Georgia, correct?
Oh yeah, that was, and I do feel for Mr. Herbstreit after last week, losing his dog like he did. But, that was his big argument in 2007. If you don't play for your conference championship, you don't deserve to go to the national championship game. But that tune changed after a while.
Yeah, a lot of people agreed with him on that side, on that argument. There's an SEC battle in the afternoon in Gainesville where LSU is favored by 5 at Florida. Alabama just took LSU behind the woodshed last week. You have a 5-star pick here.
Yeah, it's 2 teams that are just reeling right now. I just trust LSU a little bit more. I I think Nussmeier is a good quarterback. I know he didn't play like one last week. And, I just think all this stuff that's been going on with Florida and, will their head coach be back? Will he not? Even though he got the vote of confidence, they just had too many distractions this year. So I'm just going to go with the Tigers on that one. And just,
Okay.
I never want to pick the Gators.
Usually, I would think the vote of confidence for the coach, in this case, Napier, would be a good thing, but you never know who's going to be playing for you next year. You could lose players. Like I had this terrible, being an Ohio State fan as I am, I had this, we got Caleb Downs from Alabama this year. He's playing. I got this feeling there's so many seniors on this team that Ohio State's going to lose. Caleb Downs might say, hey, you know what? I think I'll go back to Alabama for my junior year.
You never know. I mean, it's basically free agency every year now in the off season.
The offensive lineman, Proctor, Caden Proctor, was at Bama, was at Iowa briefly, and then he said, I think I'm just going to go back to Alabama. So, yeah, you're right. You got to, as these coaches say, you got to recruit the players every year.
Yeah, it's nuts. Hopefully that will be one of the next things they put into place just to, keep kids out of school for at least some period of time.
Blue dog is a term we commonly use when in basketball when we talk about the Kansas, the Kentuckys, the Dukes, the North Carolinas. In football, we can bring it up here with this game in Los Angeles this weekend. Nebraska's going to Southern California. John Robinson, the tremendous Southern California coach, just passed away yesterday. I think he won 5 national championships at Southern Cal. There was a time where these two were the 2 top programs in America. Now, as my friend John Perkerson would say, here's a classic Big Ten matchup for you. Nebraska at Southern California. Southern Cal favored by 9.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nebraska on this one. I know Matt Rule is still kind of looking for that signature win this year. And even though USC is not the USC of old, I mean, there's just something that you can put on your resume when you beat the Trojans. So I'm going to go with them and see how it goes.
Have they been so bad, John, that the Carrollton quarterback, Lewis, I believe is his name, Julian, has it been so bad that he may not go to Southern Cal? And I know he's on an official visit to Georgia this weekend and that Georgia might steal him.
I don't know. A lot of the folks that I knew at Carrollton have kind of left, so I don't know as much. If I was a betting man, I would not bet on him being at USC, but you never know. I mean, Lincoln Riley always has the fact, like, look how many Heisman quarterbacks I've coached. And, he may sell them on you can be the guy who turns this program around. And, maybe this kid wants to take a bet on himself. And, too, they'll probably back the Brinks truck up to his house. So I do not think he'll be at Georgia because I think they had kind of a falling out with each other. But I would not be shocked if he's on another Big Ten team somewhere next year besides the Trojans.
And I imagine that he would want a guaranteed starting, position to come. And Gunnar Stockton is going to deserve to have his opportunity. He's waited long enough.
Yeah, and there's the Jaden Rashada who transferred in last year, and there's another kid they brought in last year named Puglisi. And with the transfer portal, there's no telling who else they may bring in. So, we're in the day and age, you're not going to keep 3 or 4 quarterbacks. So somebody's going to wind up transferring out. But it'll be interesting to see how that quarterback competition plays out this spring.
It will be. Let's go to the hottest team in the SEC right now. I mean, I guess is that fair for me to say? I mean, there's so many hot teams, but the way they're producing here the last few weeks, no one's really caught my eye has looked better because I know Ole Miss had that huge win over Georgia, but if you look at past their schedule, past that for a couple of games, they were really struggling, including a win over Oklahoma that was absolutely ugly. But South Carolina went on the road. They took care of business at an improved Vanderbilt team. Now they're at home against Missouri. I have a 5-star here, and you and I are on the same side. We both probably think South Carolina wins the game, but 13.5 points, at least for me, are too many to give Missouri because I still think this is a fine football team, a pretty strong defensive team. And if they get some things worked out offensively, I think they can compete in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, I think it's the tale of, Mizzou was the hot team to start the season. South Carolina is the hot team now. So, just kind of a battle of 2 teams that have had very similar seasons. And, I I could see that being one of those. One of them wins on a last minute field goal, and it just being a 60-minute battle.
Oh, next on our list is Tennessee at Georgia. You like Georgia -9 against Tennessee. Before you tell us like why you settled on that, can you pinpoint what's going on with Tennessee's football team right now? They looked fabulous earlier this year, like an offense that just could not be stopped. And even in their win last week at home against Mississippi State, they weren't impressive, or as we sometimes say, the eye test. They really didn't pass that so-called eye test. So what's going on with the Vols?
You know, I think what I would pinpoint it on, I can never remember how to pronounce his last name, so I'll just call him Nico I.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, true freshman. You're going to go through your lumps there. Very talented. It's going to be interesting to see how he does the next 2 or 3 seasons if he stays with Heupel. See what kind of quarterback he becomes. I mean, but they're still a talented team, and kind of like you say, you've seen what they can be when everything's clicking on all cylinders. But it's also, you got a true freshman playing the most important position on the field. Sometimes you're going to get those growing pains as well.
But you do believe that Georgia can win this game by 10 or more?
I just got that feeling that hopefully this is like the Texas game, that these guys are going to have just a fire lit under them. And I mean, they probably are not having a fun week of practice after that game at Ole Miss. So, I could see this being one of those games where, 21-10, even, 17-6, something where it's probably just low scoring. Cause I don't know. I hope I'm wrong here, but I think Carson Beck is just shook, and I'm not sure if he's able to get back to what he has been.
Okay. Oregon has been tremendous this year. I think back to when Alabama went to Wisconsin. The two biggest victories for Bama this year, the most impressive wins, both on the road to me. They beat LSU and they beat Wisconsin, and there were no doubters. Oregon now has that challenge of going into Madison. Oregon favored by 14.5. How do you see this one?
If I was a bandwagon guy, my whole house would be Oregon Duck stuff now. I'm going to ride with my guy, Coach Lannon, and the Ducks in this one. And I feel like if they keep playing like the way they are, they may be the only team at the end of the regular season who's undefeated. And we'll see what happens with the championship games and the playoffs.
Well, if you wore something University of Oregon to Noonan High, it would make Trey Walker pretty happy. Coach Walker's son. He's been an Oregon fan for some time now. This next game is the most interesting game to me. I'll make a selection here. I'm not going to make a selection here, but you know what? I'm going to make a selection. Brigham Young, most people are saying had help from the referees against Utah to remain undefeated. There were some questionable calls. I thought some of them were legit. Some of them probably could be questioned. But when Kansas has a losing record and they're playing on the road at Brigham Young, and Brigham Young's only favored by 3.5, something's up with that. It's almost like the lines makers are really, really, really respecting Kansas there. So I'm going to make a selection. I'm going to go with Kansas plus 3.5 there. I wasn't initially going to do that, but when I started looking at that line, it started getting my attention there. So I see that you like Brigham Young minus 3.5 to remain undefeated. And I think it's a beautiful story. You're too young to remember 1984 when they went undefeated and they won the national championship. They beat Michigan in the Holiday Bowl. They didn't play on New Year's Day or anything like that, but they were the only undefeated team, and they got the national championship that year. So you like the Cougars?
Yeah, I think so. But with your point too, all the distractions. When the Utah athletic director is just ripping you apart after the post-game conference, I would not be shocked if you see the Cougars go down as well. But it's just Kansas, and Kansas football is not exactly known for lighting the world on fire. So that's why I'm, if it was Iowa State or maybe I get them all confused now with the Big 12 and the ACC. A Texas Tech or someone that is going to come in there with a more high-powered offense, I'd probably roll with that. But just Kansas, don't trust them.
Oklahoma State, who's not had a good year, gave Brigham Young all they could handle. I believe it was on a Friday night game a few weeks ago. And we'll see what Kansas can do there. Let's go to the NFL. The first game up, the Baltimore Ravens are favored by 3 at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is big rivalry game. I see that you are leaning towards the Ravens -3.
Yeah, I love the Steelers. They've always kind of been probably, even though I don't follow the NFL as much, my second favorite team because Hines Ward, they always seem to do a good job of getting UGA players in there and giving them a shot. But, Lamar Jackson, Todd Monken, when they're on, it's something to see, and especially after last week. So that's why I'm going to go roll with the Ravens.
Although he's a bit of a loose cannon, you probably hope that George Pickens has a good game for the Steelers, but the Ravens come out ahead.
He is the prime example of if he could just get out of his own way, he'd be the best wide receiver in the league.
He does seem to come with a lot of you might need some Advil to take to have to deal to put up with him if he was on your team.
Well, and the thing is about him, I know people will always go back, well, watch what he did to the kid at Georgia Tech. In my defense, that kid at Georgia Tech started the fight. But it's always just kind of stupid stuff that it's like, come on, man. You're like what middle school.
What was Kirby during COVID? What did Kirby say? What are we in second grade here or something? When he took the water bottle and he squeezed the water bottle on the opponent's player and stuff. I mean, it's never a dull moment with Kirby and UGA football. I'm not even going to get into the kid celebrating with the Ole Miss people because I'm with Kirby. I think it was a mistake. I think the kid's sorry about it, and I think there's other things to worry about.
I will say this, though. When Kirby said, what an idiot, that's probably the nicest thing he said to Jake Pope since Saturday.
Probably so. I think the kid just got caught up in a moment. And anyway, All right. So I have rode the Atlanta Falcons all year long, and it's just this up and down, up and down, up and down. This week they play at Bo Nix and the Broncos. The Broncos favored by 1.5, and I'm hoping the Broncos have a hangover from losing to the Chiefs, a game that they had won. You get a 35-yard field goal blocked at the end, and the Chiefs remained undefeated. So give me the Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5. How about you?
Yeah, going with those two. I'm backing Kirk O'Change as long as I can.
Are on the same side, the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills. I mean, the Chiefs should have lost last week. They're going to lose this week in Buffalo. I've got Buffalo -2.5.
Yeah, and I'm a big Josh Allen fan. I just like watching him play, and I feel like he's still trying to find that big signature win. And hopefully he can get it in the playoffs sooner or later. But it's always fun watching him and Patrick Mahomes go against each other because very similar games, very similar players, but. I just feel like the Chiefs are eventually going to lose that game, especially with the way they've been playing. So I'm rolling with the Bills.
My 4 panel members for the Sunday night game are split. The Bengals are at the Chargers, and the Chargers are 1-point favorites. 2 of them have the Bengals, and 2 of them, like John, he's joining with Danny, have the Chargers -1. How did you land on the Chargers?
It's just the Bengals, ever since they made it to that AFC Championship, it's been a sight to watch. Just how can you lose a game? Or let me rephrase that. Sorry. It's always seems like, all right, how are the Bengals going to find a way to lose a game? Like, Joe Burrow, plays like he's the best quarterback who's ever played, and yet they still find a way to lose a game. It's a sight to see sometimes.
A lot to take in. You're right. All right, folks, let's run down John's picks. He's 61-58. 3-8 in the 5 stars. He's got the Naval Academy +6.5. Clemson -10. His 5 stars, LSU -5 on the road in Gainesville. He has Nebraska +9 at Southern California in a matchup that I tell you in the 70s and the 80s would mean everything. These days, his team's struggling to be around 500, a little bit better. Nebraska a little bit better than that. Missouri is at South Carolina and catching 13.5. Missouri +13.5 is his pick. I join him on that one. He's got his alma mater, the Georgia Bulldogs, favored by 9 at home against Tennessee in a game that Georgia really needs. Oregon -14.5 is the selection at Wisconsin. He goes with the Brigham Young -3.5 at home. They're trying to remain undefeated. In the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens -3. Those Dirty Birds, the Atlanta Falcons +1.5. The Buffalo Bills -2.5. And the Los Angeles Chargers -1. I'm 26-26, 5-6 with the 5 stars. I've got Tulane -6.5. Pittsburgh plus 10. My 5 stars, Missouri plus 13.5. I go with Kansas plus 3.5. The Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5. And I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to join forces with John there, and we're going to try to stop the Chiefs' undefeated season. Two of our remaining panel members have the Chiefs as their 5-star. We'll get to those picks shortly. I'm 10-4 in soccer, but this is a weekend where a lot of countries are facing off with each other, so a lot of the club teams have off. Will take off as well. Danny is 56-53. He's 4-7 with the 5 stars. Our 5 stars are just not good. Tulane minus 6.5. Pittsburgh plus 10. E's got LSU minus 5. That's a clean sweep. Everybody, all the panel members go with LSU minus 5. He takes Southern Cal minus 9. He joins us with Missouri plus 13.5 at South Carolina. He's also on the Georgia Bulldogs minus 9. And like John, he's got Oregon minus 14.5 and BYU minus 3.5. But in the NFL, he's opposite of John with the Pittsburgh Steelers plus 3. However, he joins forces with John with the Falcons plus 1.5. His 5-star, Kansas City Chiefs plus 2.5. And he has the Chargers minus 1 also. Kevin is 57-62. That's 5-6 with the 5 stars. He's got Navy plus 6.5. Clemson minus 10. LSU minus 5. Southern Cal minus 9. He goes with the South Carolina Gamecocks minus 13.5. He's got Georgia minus 9. He's opposite of John with Wisconsin plus 14.5. And he's also got Brigham Young minus 3.5, meaning all 4 members of the panel went with Brigham Young. I went opposite with Kansas. I don't fault them there. The Steelers he has at plus 3. He's got the Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5. Kevin's 5 stars, the Kansas City Chiefs plus 2.5. And he takes the Cincinnati Bengals plus 1. Stormy is 1 game behind John in the overall standing. Stormy is 60-59, 4-7 with the 5 stars. He's got Navy plus 6.5, Clemson minus 10, LSU minus 5. He's also on Southern Cal minus 9. As I look, that means John was the only one that went with Nebraska plus 9 out of the 4 members of the panel. He's got South Carolina minus 13.5. His 5 stars, the Tennessee Volunteers plus 9, but he is a Georgia Tech fan, and I think there's a lot of intent there behind that because he's anti-UGA. He also goes with Oregon minus 14.5 and Brigham Young minus 3.5. In the NFL, little bit difference here. He's got Pittsburgh plus 3 at home against the Ravens. He takes the Denver Broncos minus 1.5 against the Falcons. The rest of us were on the Atlanta Falcons. He takes the Kansas City Chiefs plus 2.5 and the Cincinnati Bengals plus 1. Got about 2 minutes left. I know you want to wish the Newton High Cougars good luck, as well as East Coweta, your former employer. Both teams are going to be opening the state playoffs. I talked with Chip earlier today, and it's so critical for him to get a victory over Tri-Cities on Friday, open up the playoffs in a right direction. I told him, hey, you've got this. They've had a great season.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And, tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow's World Kindness Day, and it's also one of the best women who's ever lived. My mom's birthday tomorrow, so I love you, Mom, and happy birthday.
I'm glad you said that. For sharing that. Well, both your parents raised a heck of a kid in you, so we know that they obviously good people, because this usually when you have a great kid, it's usually a reflection on the parents. So you're right. The proof is there.
Well, more so my brother than me, but yeah, they're great people.
Well, there's no doubting that your brother's probably a good guy too. I don't really know him that well, but I've heard of him, and he's friends with it's fair to say friends with Allie and Matt McCord, who are friends of mine in McDonough, Georgia. Got less than a minute. Any other? I'm glad you got the shout out to your mom, and the be kindest thing is because this is something you believe in Facebook. You always tell people, like on your election post, regardless of who wins, let's all be nice to everybody. I appreciate the fact that you're looking out for the kindness.
Well, I'm not always the best at that, but I do try. And I just the holiday season's coming up. Want to wish everybody, in case I'm not on here before then, a happy Thanksgiving. And, with the busyness of the holidays, just remember what Thanksgiving and Christmas really are all about. And, enjoy that time with your families coming up as well.
No, that's well said. It's a great perspective. I think often people are that way on Thanksgiving Day, but once the food is done and the dishes have been cleaned up and stuff like that, I think people follow back in the routine of their regular lives, and we tend to forget about what all we are thankful for. I think it's important to give God the blessing with everything. John, I really appreciate you taking the time. For Jake Barton, who's our producer, John Perkerson, I'm Tony Jones. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony.